Welcome to The World Awaits.
Travel tales to inspire your wanderlust.
I'm Kirsty Bedford, journalist, editor and travel writer.
And I'm Belinda Jackson, author, travel journalist and columnist, and we're your weekly co-hosts. Welcome back to The World Awaits. How are you all?
Hi everyone, how's your week been, Belle?
I cannot believe we are already halfway through January. I hope everyone has got lots of great things in the pipeline for the rest of summer.
And if not, keep listening, people, because we have a rundown of some of the best events to lock into your calendar before spring sets in.
Yes, and so given that we are Melbourne-based and the event is on now, it would be remiss of us not to mention the tennis. We are in the middle of the Australian Open with the finals on the 26th of January. And if you can't get tickets into the stadia, you can always get a ground pass, which is such a great way to be amongst the atmosphere. And you've got access to the Melbourne Park precinct. There's pop-up food trucks, entertainment, Aperol spritz everywhere, and of course, big screens to watch the Grand Slam. So do you know, remember we went to the tennis together last year, Kirsty?
Yeah, well, Aperol spritz, come on.
It was so good. I mean, I go every year. I might have skipped the COVID years, but last year when we went, we popped into the Emirates Hospitality Pavilion, which had a recreation of its business class bar on the A380. I just love that. Like, it gives it such a great travel application. And we even got to see an interview with one of the top seeds, the Lina. She was amazing. And Emirates has actually signed on as a major sponsor for the next 5 years. So
Yeah, it's so good. The atmosphere is amazing. It's such a great event to go to. Love the tennis. And the event season in Melbourne just seemed to keep on going well into March. So they've got, in Melbourne, we've got the Formula One, Melbourne International Comedy Festival, and the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival. The Formula One is another one that, sort of like the tennis, can be a bit tricky to get tickets for unless you've sort of planned in advance. But ground passes are also available, and that's a great one. Another one with a really good atmosphere if you don't mind the noise. For a good laugh, the comedy festival is held all over the city, and it runs into April, so you can have lots of time to get a good chuckle. And foodies don't want to miss the Food and Wine Festival, which attracts about 150,000 people and a suite of famous chefs like Nigella Lawson. And one of the flagship events of that event, which sounds so cool, I haven't done this, is the world's longest lunch, as well as the world's longest brunch. And they're curated by a different chef every year, where you can sit at a 600-metre long table in King's Domain and enjoy the ultimate in al fresco dining, so with fellow food lovers. So yeah, no, I haven't done that. Have you done that one, Belle?
I've done it a few times, and it's just amazing because you're just sitting out under the trees and the food just keeps rolling out, and it's just insane. Like, it's got this real sense of camaraderie. Everyone's just, the table is so long. You know, I actually thought it would have been longer than that, and it just stretches along the banks. It's a phenomenal event, but there's so many other free and low cost events in satellites, not just in Melbourne, but all over Victoria as well. So I know there's a longest lunch down on the Mornington Peninsula usually. It's such a great thing to
Yeah, great.
such a great event. Yeah.
I have actually attended the comedy festival, though, and I always feel like you're expected to laugh even when it's not that funny. So, they walk out and they go, hi, and everyone just bursts into giggles. It's so surreal. The whole environment it's just bizarre. You feel like you're sort of forced to laugh when, just at every move, and every kind of comment. But anyway, there's some Melbourne events for you, and yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't go to the comedy things. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe I'm just too much more food and wine. But if you're going up to Sydney from the 14th of February, that's of course is Mardi Gras, the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras Festival, which is celebrating 47 years this year. It runs over 2 weeks and ends with the famous Mardi Gras parade on the 1st of March.
Yeah, I love that parade. It's so much fun, but it can be really hard to see the action. So make sure you get a good spot beforehand. Otherwise, I went up one year with some girlfriends, and we were chasing them down, peering through the wire fence, like groupies. It was a bit weird. And if you're planning a visit to the Red Centre, time it the week of the 27th of March for Fab Alice, which is a festival held in Alice Springs that pays homage to Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. My God, I love that film. And I actually took my mum and we saw that theatre. It was exceptional. And at this event, you can expect 4 days of live drag music and events.
I actually saw it. I was in San Francisco and I went with an Australian friend, and there were so many places we were the only ones laughing because there was such Aussie jokes in there. And we were just screaming with laughter, and everybody else was like, what are they laughing at?
Down to Adelaide, and don't miss the Adelaide Festival at the end of February, which runs for 2 weeks. The opening event, called Innocence, is said to be the greatest opera of the 21st century, and there's also a theatre performance of Australian best-selling author Trent Dalton's book Love Stories, along with 65 other events and 11 world premieres.
Cinephiles will want to head to Queensland the first week of February for Australia's largest celebration of film and television in Surfers Paradise. From the glamorous star-studded AACTA Awards red carpet to workshops, masterclasses and film screenings held throughout the festival, you're sure to bump into one of your celebrity crushes, of which I have many. And a few weeks later, on the 13th, is for something completely different, the Chinchilla Melon Festival. And we have actually, I think we've got a bit of a crush on this one because we've mentioned it a few times before. It just looks hilarious. It's 20,000 people going to this tiny town in Queensland, and that's where you'll find watermelon skiing, melon bungee, farm tours and street parades because, as we mentioned, we do love a good parade.
Yes. We did mention this before because we were talking about how they got the watermelons on their feet to ski on them. And also in February, if you're in Perth, the Perth Festival is an event not to miss. It has 104 events with 380 artists performing. Gosh, that's a lot. And among them are Midnight Oil's frontman Peter Garrett, who's giving a rare solo performance into a bit of Midnight Oil Bell, Aussie legends as they are.
Oh, yeah, definitely if you're into activism rock, which I don't mind, a bit of protest singing. If you really want to be taken to new heights, boom, boom, other than the celebritydom of Peter Garrett, and I did have to look that word up, head to Canberra in mid-March for the Canberra Balloon Spectacular, where around 50 hot air balloons take to the skies and thousands watch from the ground. But if you book now, you can jump on board one and get a bird's eye view across Australia's capital city.
This episode is sponsored by Explore Worldwide, which offers small group adventures with local tour leaders. We're taking you to Sri Lanka with Miguel Kurnet, who created Sri Lanka's first long-distance hiking route, the new 300-kilometre The Pico Trail. Venture through tea plantations, forests, cultural and historical sites, and visit remote villages where you'll connect with the local culture. Welcome to the show, Miguel.
Thank you very much.
It's so great to have you on The World Awaits. Let's start by tell us a bit about your background.
Okay, sure. So I'm from Spain originally, and I've lived in Sri Lanka for the last 22 years. I came in 2003 after traveling with my wife a little around Asia. For about a year, we backpacked around Asia, and we ended up here. Coincidentally, we got married that year, which was 2002. So we came here on honeymoon as well. And, we just immediately, there was a connection with Sri Lanka. She was working for a consulting company. And as it turned out, they offered her a position here in Colombo to run their office. And so we came to live in Sri Lanka in 2003. And from the get-go, I had to sort of decide what I was going to do. Because it was a very big change. We were living in Singapore, working there in the corporate world. And so when I came here, I switched immediately to tourism. My family has a background in tourism back in Spain, but all connected to the mountains and ski resorts and things like that. So I've been hiking and skiing and biking and, I've had a very outdoor busy life, so to speak, going back to my childhood. And so when I came here, one of the first things I did was just explore the island, rented a motorbike. Those were the good old days. And I found myself up in the hills, and I realized there was this maze of thousands of kilometers of trails. So I dropped my bike and and I hiked and I hiked and I hiked, and then I, realized that, it was a part of the world which not only had a lot of spending quite a lot of time in the hills and hiking. And around 2015, I thought, maybe I should write a book, because I had already kind of like mapped out quite a few hikes. And I thought to myself, maybe, there's definitely an interest, and maybe I should, publish something like, hiking in Sri Lanka. By that time, I had been walking the Camino de Santiago in Spain. I had finished it, and I had also walked a number of other trails in Europe. So, but then the idea of this having some sort of long distance hiking trail started to, kind of crystallize in my mind. Think, okay, this country has thousands of kilometers of, perhaps we could describe, not on trails that have a double purpose, if you like. They're not just for transporting tea down from the fields to the factories, but with a different lens, they're unbelievably beautiful recreational trails, or trails with recreational value, to use that word, in the sense that it's just lovely to go for a walk on these tea estate roads, and see how the industry works, and then bump into the locals, and then there's all sorts of different layers of stories and mythology and history and the stories of the planters. And so I thought, it has a lot of the elements of the Camino in Spain, because the Camino in Spain is, as much as it is a walk in nature, it is very much a walking community, from village to village, where you arrive and you have a nice lunch, and you see how the locals live, and it's a very sort of down to earth, slow travel type of experience. And for me, I was looking at Sri Lanka, and I was looking at the hills, and I was thinking, this has, not only does it have all of the elements of that type of experience, but it's like a diamond waiting to be polished, if you like. Or, there's the ingredients there for a magnificent world-class product for the country that would in some way redefine Sri Lanka, or begin to redefine Sri Lanka as a destination, pretty much ticking all the boxes that modern, discerning travelers of all segments, and without any reference to a particular nationality or background, but travelers that like to venture off the beaten path into the unknown and really sort of get deep into the destination, that this was just the perfect setting for it.
Yeah, but how does one go about, like, where do you start by launching a 300+ kilometer trail? Like, how do you get started on, on making that a reality?
One step at a time is really the answer, literally, physically, and mentally, spiritually, one step at a time. And you don't really start from that point. I certainly didn't. I just realized, if you like, that it was a possibility. But that realization came on the back of having lived in the country for a long time, having known the lay of the land, and having, well, in my case, I guess, a very keen interest in topography, geography, maps. I'm one of those people that I'll spend, a good hour, an hour and a half just looking at Google Earth and trying to find things, and, like a treasure trove of little, oh, there's a temple there, oh, there's a shrine there, oh, there's a community there, oh, well, let's go and have a look.
Whereabouts, sorry, just to step back a bit so people know, sort of, they can picture in their mind. So, I mean, this is Sri Lanka's, it's called the Pico Trail, and this is Sri Lanka's first long distance walking trail. But where does it actually go? Like, where does it start, and where do you go to? And how did you, I mean, let's talk first of all about where it goes, and then on the back of that, how did you know how to make, where to go, how to create that?
Yeah, so, or it starts in Norelia. You can do it either way. It's in both directions. If you come from Norelia towards Kandy, it's slightly, the total elevation gain is lower, So it's slightly easier if you like. And it's divided into 22 different stages of approximately 15 kilometers each. The design purposefully was designed village to village, following a little bit of the template of the Camino, with a intent or the purpose of bringing tourism dollars into those remote communities where people would arrive in a village and need water, bananas, fruits, a tuk-tuk, or some transport, and obviously some accommodation as well, even though the accommodation is all scattered around the tea country. So it was designed with that intent. And the reason why the European Union and USA looked at the project so favorably and decided to come in as and fund a whole development program was because the tea country, the hill country in Sri Lanka, is one of the most impoverished regions of the country. There's all sorts of different problems, social and economic and so on and so forth, and poverty and all that. And so it's quite self-evident that, creating this as a vehicle, if you like, or as a formula, as a framework for hikers, if you like, in this case, to venture out into these communities one day away from the main tourism hotspots or 2 days away, and then you start to get really remote, and that they would bring, some measure of economic relief, if you like, to those remote communities. And in fact, we've managed to kind of begin to quantify that already. And, and there's a whole new GDP, if you like, of economic impact that has resulted as a result of the Peco Trail and we've measured impact in terms of people spending every day for whatever it is they need, but also secondary jobs like, restoring a little, refurbishing a room or two as a homestay or whatever, plus all the supply chain, plus the value of the repositioning of the brand for Sri Lanka tourism. And we're looking at anything between $20 to $50 million of an economy that did not exist before. And that is up until this particular day. Now that money is all very nicely spread out into the communities. And it's not, let's say, going through the traditional distribution channels of tourism, where a lot of that would stay. It's called leakage in tourism, would stay with the big corporates or the airlines or whatever it is. That has already manifested in a sense. So that idea, if you like, has already manifested. And if you look at our Facebook groups, for instance, there's on the Peco Trail hikers, we have 15,000 people, and most of them Sri Lankan, and a lot of them are actually from those communities that are coming onto the platform to post pictures about what they're doing, and they're coming up with new concepts. There are guides, there are homestays, there are farm stays, and you can see the whole economy kind of bubbling at the grassroots level, and that is real magic, because going back to the communities in the hills, as I said, there's very high rates of suicide. There is what we call the poverty of hope. Those communities, if you ask them, for instance, we do a lot of this. I last week, for instance, I meet communities all the time. Communities as in like visiting schools or visiting hospitals and things like that. And the question, do you have any hope for the future, is usually responded, no. And, and so by the general population, and then on top of that, you've got a lot of, there's certain aspects of the culture also that we want to obviously challenge a little bit, but at the same time, very mindfully, because of course, culture is something to be protected in tourism, certainly. And, so with a measure of a reasonableness, if you like, we're trying to, like, for instance, we would ask a question like, to the elder men, will you allow your daughters and granddaughters to work in tourism? And the answer is yes, in a kind of like, they wiggle their head like this. But that kind of question is an important question, because, we have to challenge some of those preconceived, perhaps cultural sort of like, blockages, if you like, because clearly, anyone working in the tourism industry is going to make approximately 4 to 5 times the average salary they're making working for the tea industry. Now, we obviously don't want to take anyone away from the tea industry, in the sense of not of we appreciate that the tea industry needs labor, but at the price of that they pay, in a sense, it's a it's a tough call. So especially for women, for instance, slightly older women, for instance, who instead of going out to the field, might be able to come up with like a cooking experience or something like that. So there's because only 20% of the people that work in the tea country are actually employed by the tea industry, and a lot of the rest is just people that either retired or children or whatever. And there's just a lot of opportunity to bring hope to those communities and give them opportunity.
Absolutely. And this is probably like asking you who's your favorite child, but is there a part of the trail that you particularly, is there a part that for travelers that you think is like the most stunning or is going to give the most impact to the community, or is there a part that does both?
Yeah, for sure. And the 22 stages are very different. There's approximately 80 villages that it goes through. I would say stage 1 is a very nice, easy stage to do with
When does that start? Stage.
Sorry, and
Where does
in
that
Kandy.
In Kandy, yeah.
To Galaha, which is about 13 kilometers. Stage 2 as well. It goes to Del Tota town. I love stage 7 for community because it's like, every 3 or 4 kilometers you come across a little hamlet, a little kind of village, and then if you want to go even like further afield, stages 20, stage 19, those stages also lots of community on the eastern side of the hill country that get no tourism at all, or at least until now. And it's and then if on the flip side of that you're looking to experience the trail and you want to just go off the beaten path and be in nature completely, then stages 9, stage 10, stage 11, stage 12, all those stages are the entire day practically just in nature.
What was the most rewarding part for you in creating this trail?
I think, I guess it's an ongoing thing, as the months roll on and the years roll on. So the most rewarding thing is really that what I just mentioned before. If we can bring some measure of relief and a little bit of hope to those communities and get them on par with the rest of Sri Lanka in terms of their life, in terms of their standard of living and their, then I think if we're moving things in that direction, then I think we're doing something really pretty significant. And at the same time, if we can drive the conservation agenda, because there's leopard corridors, there's few leopard corridors, there's all sorts of, there's nature to be protected, and also there is old unproductive tea to be perhaps done away with and rewilded, because why not? I mean, Sri Lanka, unfortunately, it was what it was. So over 200 years, most of the hills became tea. And that meant removing all the original indigenous rainforest and canopy. And so now there's an opportunity to bring a certain amount of that back and create more biodiversity. So those are wins, those are. And then, of course, there's the question of Sri Lanka tourism as a whole. But even beyond that, there's the question of Sri Lanka as a society as a whole. I mean, if you think about a country, this is a country that has gone through a tremendous amount of turmoil, if you like, and aggro over the years, to go up to the hills, to start to reconnect with themselves, to start to feel the confidence that it takes to, you get from finishing 1 stage, 2 stages, 3 stages, maybe the entire trail, to reconnect with their country, to see how beautiful it is. I mean, of course, it's their country, but I mean, many of them haven't ever walked in the hills or gone, put a foot in the jungle on some, path or whatever. So I know that it's also having this kind of effect on the thousands of people that are doing it, that are local, that are suddenly, benefiting from this from a personal standpoint and from a point of personal growth. But also, hopefully, these people will also see things in a different light and make better decisions in their own lives, whatever they do. So that's at the very basic level of what a trail like this can actually do to help the overall mood in the country and the general sort of outlook of people at an individual and collective level. And then the tourism industry.
I love that. I love that because you often think about, what it means for the traveller, but obviously, like you've explained, that there are so many benefits to the community, but also just generally to the locals who either haven't experienced their own parts of their own country or just, the mood is in regards to, and getting them behind that.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. We this trail. Then, of course, and then on top of that, if you look at the travel industry itself, I mean, this trail suddenly won 2 awards. Which, I mean, if you ask me again, what is the greatest achievement? I think from an optical standpoint, it certainly is National Geographic, awarding the Pecco Trail, Best Experience Worldwide 2024, and the UK Travel Media, the Travel Writers Guild, Best International Development Project 2023. That you cannot put a price to, in a sense, like that kind of projection, that kind of PR, if you like, plus everything else that was published, because we were everywhere, and from the New York Times to the Wall Street Journal to the Times, there, it's suddenly created a new fresh narrative for Sri Lanka tourism as a whole, at a time in which the consumers worldwide, like say travelers worldwide, are looking for community connection, wellness, mental health, soft adventure, slow travel. You can throw pretty much anything you want. It's like a open source kind of thing, where you can build on all of these experiences. It is in itself, in its essence, all of that put together. So the timing, the stars really aligned for us, in the sense that it manifested thorough, and it does at the grassroots level, but let's say a new kind of product development phase that really projects what Sri Lanka wants to be known for through and by product development from the grassroots up.
Yeah.
This is just a one way of doing it, but it won't do to go around the world telling people to come to Sri Lanka for the same reasons that we were telling them to come in 1975.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's amazing. I love talking about this. It's such an incredible venture that you've done, but we're running out of time. So I'm going to have to ask you the question that we ask all of our interviews about what is the most bizarre thing that's ever happened to you on your travels?
In 2000, we dropped our job, left our jobs, and decided to head east. We were trying to get to Australia. You see, I lived in Sydney when I was a little boy. My parents were posted to Sydney, and I had never gone back since, because we left when I was 10. But of course, for me, my memories of Australia, as a kid, well, you couldn't wish to grow up in a better place. And so I always wanted to go back. And in the year 2000, when we went traveling, the idea was to get to Sydney to the Olympic Games. We went to Greece along the way, because we wanted to get to Sydney overland, without taking a plane. That was the idea. And when we went to Greece, we passed the city of Olympia. And in Olympia, I proposed to my wife. And also I took some relics from we bought a few little things, knickknacks and things. And I thought I'd take them with me all the way to Sydney. And maybe as a talisman or some in token, I would see if I could find somebody worthy of, this, and maybe it might give them some luck. But we didn't make it to the Olympics, but we made it to the Paralympics, which was actually even better, because there we met the Spanish Paralympic team, and we gave these little gifts all the way from Olympia to a swimmer who went on to win 4 gold medals. So
Wow. So nice. And did Sydney live up to your memories?
Very much so. I went to visit the house where we lived, and it was just with my wife at the time, well, my girlfriend at the time. We got married 2 years later. And now I knock on the door, and the lady that opens the door, she actually was a South African lady with her husband that lives there. And she was like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "Well, we used to live here 16 years ago." And I was wondering if and she was so open and so nice. And she said, "Please come in, have a cup of tea with us. Come and take a look at the house." And I went up to see my room and all that.
What a lovely story. Oh, look, it's been so great chatting with you. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. And we will put all the to the trail and information in the show notes.
Superb. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Enjoying this episode? You can experience it for yourself on Explore's Sri Lanka in-depth tour with a local tour leader who will get you off the beaten track to discover the real Sri Lanka. Head to exploreworldwide.com.au to find out more. Our tip this week is about travelling with your furry bestie, and we're not talking hairy husbands here. Who writes the scripts here? It's all about travelling with dogs, and our expert is Shandos Cleaver, author of the new book Off the Leash in Australia, published by Hardy Grant. Shandos travels with her husband Joel and their miniature dachshund Schnitzel. He is super cute, and she is also the founder of travelnuity.com, a website focused on dog-friendly travel. And I'm going to spell it for you. It is travelnuity, Nuity.com.
And as well as road tripping, where you can take your dog to stay with you in holiday parks, and everyone kind of pretty much knows about that, there are also increasingly more hotels around the country that let you bring your dog along and don't think you have to rough it either.
Oh, I've travelled with my dogs, but nowhere near as much as Shandos and her far more portable Pooch. I took my whacking great hairy Samoyed Pasha for a hotel stay in Melbourne. I was doing a review for the Sydney Morning Herald. We stayed at the Element Melbourne in Richmond, which is a Marriott hotel. So let me tell you, Pasha isn't allowed upstairs, and he certainly is not allowed on the bed. So it took a little convincing to get him up on the bed. Okay, I had to ask him not once but twice, and yeah, he just...
Not allowed on the bed at home, but allowed on the bed in the hotel.
Yeah. They said, let him up on the bed. And I was like, oh my goodness. Okay. Breaking the habit of a lifetime.
Yeah, well, you don't have to ask my dog twice. Shandos' book and website have lists of hotels that you take your dogs. Usually it's a couple of rooms set aside especially for dogs because, while many people want to bring their dogs, there are some that, don't want to have a hotel stay, and then there's like dog here in the bed head or something. But
I don't think that's going to happen, is it? I mean, that's where you pay the manning fee.
Yeah, but I don't know how you'd ever get the smell out. So I kind of get that. I get they set rooms aside.
Well, yeah. I mean, I have a non-smelling, one of those non-smelling dogs. But look, Shandos does note that even if Yeah. They don't smell. They are fragrant as the day is long. And they're also hyperallergenic as well. But look, Shandos does note that even if the hotels do publicise that they take hounds on third-party booking sites such as hotel.com, she advises you contact the hotels directly, as often the third-party sites won't be able to take those booking fees because there might be things, and this is what bites me, there might be weight restrictions of the dogs. Often they're like maximum 10 kilos, and mine are like, 27, 34 kilos. And there's always additional cleaning fees for dog stays that need to be, and, they've got to clarify the breed and stuff like that. There are some, like I found, that often you'll have certain breeds are restricted from staying in hotels as well.
Yeah, well, I've got a German short-haired pointer, and she definitely smells. So we would need the cleaning. Don't need the cleaning for in there. I mean, we do wash her, but she still smells. And the most pet-friendly state, according to Shandos, is Victoria, with dogs allowed on metropolitan trains as long as they're leashed and muzzled. Jump onto the website to see a pretty funny photo of her miniature dachshund with a muzzle on it because it's got, that really long nose. But that would definitely not work for my little Princess Kyella because she would not put a muzzle on. So, I mean, come on, she's the third child, right? So we'd We would be able to take her away, obviously, if we weren't taking her on public transport. And also, she'd be all over 5-star resorts, and she'd be jumping all over that bed, rolling her smelly body all over that doona. But fine dining would be out because she would also be up on the table. I'm making it sound like my dog's very, very badly behaved. She's actually a beautiful dog, but she's terrible around food. And not only would she be on the table, she would have her head up under the table on our neighbours, not just your lap. She puts her head up onto your chest.
Oh my God, mine would be doing the look, which they have got perfected because, I believe they are the most beautiful dogs in the world, and they'd just be besieging everybody in the restaurant there. A bit shocking. But as Chantal says, Australia is more dog friendly than many parts of the world, including the US, provinces in Canada, in that they do allow dogs to join you in outdoor dining areas. So, I mean, how many cafes do you know in Melbourne that you see selling puppuccinos and bone biscuits? I actually have, fun fact here, I have a dog bakery beside me. It sells only dog treats. I went in there when it first opened. I thought, I'll take the dogs in and we'll go in for I'll have a coffee. They can have a puppuccino or whatever. And they were like, sorry, we don't do coffee. I'm like, what? They don't even sell human coffee. It was insane. That's
so good.
That is commitment.
But if I took Kyla and she didn't immediately get a treat and she could smell them, she literally just starts barking. So she would just bark. She'd just start barking until she actually was given the treat. Although I have to say, our local coffee shop does give her a treat, and she does quite often sit there patiently waiting. But when she doesn't get the treat, sometimes she just will refuse to walk. So we have to literally drag her, and she's her nails scraping along the concrete.
Oh, shocking. My God, you'd be keeping everybody in business. They must love it.
Yeah, I can't even take her to the pet shop because those pet shops, what happens is there's treats all along the bottom shelf. I'm sure they just do it like they do with children in supermarkets.
Exactly.
Yes.
And they just, I mean, look, mine don't nick them outright, but they breathe on the treats. And then if I'm not looking, they give them a little lick, a little side lick. That's disgusting. But back to Shandos and some more tips. She says that the easiest way to travel with dogs is, of course, in your own car or a hire car. So you don't need to muzzle them up, like you said above with Kiala. So some tips for dog hotels. We did rustle up a couple. Some very fancy ones like the Kimpton Margot in Sydney, which says, interestingly, it doesn't matter what size the dog is. If your pet fits through the door, they are welcome to stay.
And New South Wales is also the second most dog-friendly state after Victoria. So that's a good one to keep in mind because there are loads of other places that you can look up on Shandos's website to see where they are. And in Queensland, dog-friendly hotels include the 5-star W Brisbane, which has a flash dog bed and fancy treats. And if you're in the wine country, she reminds us there are plenty of great wineries that welcome dogs. So swings and roundabouts in Margaret River in WA, you can sip wine next to your furry friends.
Yeah, they wouldn't be jumping up for that one. And she also reminds us that you can even find things like dog-friendly Airbnbs. She's got a guide to dog-friendly houseboats in Australia. How good would that be? As well as dog beaches and parks, but remembering that you can't take dogs into national parks anywhere in Australia, of course. And Shandos's book, again, is Off the Leash in Australia, and we'll put a link to the book in our show notes.
If you'd like to help support our production costs, you can buy us a coffee at coffee.com/theworldawaits. That's ko-fi.com/theworldawaits, so we can continue to bring you inspirational travel interviews with the world's best.
Next week, we are taking you on a culinary tour of Japan with chef Luke Burgess, who trained with the iconic Australian-Japanese chef Tetsuya and is the co-author of Only in Tokyo, 2 Chefs, 24 Hours, The Ultimate Food City.
And please give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Click on our profile, scroll down to the bottom to ratings and reviews. And if you're on Spotify, go to our main page and click the 3 dots under our photo, or simply drop us a line at hello@theworldawaits.au. We love nothing more than hearing from our listeners.
That's a wrap for The World Awaits this week. Click to subscribe anywhere you listen to your favourite pods. And where can people find you, Kirsty?
I'm at Kirsty Wrights on Instagram. That's KIRSTIE Wrights, WRITES.
And where can people find you, Belle?
You can find me at globalsalsa.com or on Insta at global_salsa.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.